gets a goal? Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings and sisters. Sorry we're a day late, but forgive us. It's Christmas after all. For those watching, you'll see we're in our Christmas jumpers. I've got a Christmas-themed beer, but also joined by a familiar face for our festive edition. I realised that Sam and I will actually be back before Christmas next Monday as well. So we'll have one more before the day. My daughter's looking forward to more than anything else in her life right now. But yes, joining us is a good friend of the pod, Mark, aka FPL General, joining us for the 8th year in a row on or near Christmas. I think we worked out yesterday that the first year of WTA we didn't do it due to Nick and I being totally unaware of how to remote get set up. But hey, here we are now. 8 years in, Mark. Welcome back for another year. Trust all as well?
Yeah, good to be back, lads. I hope you're both well. It's I can't believe it's been eight consecutive seasons. It's pretty impressive stuff. I'm going to have to come back next year now to get my third hat-trick ball. So you've already locked it in. But as you know, when you reach out to me every year, Tom, it's already in the diary. It's part of my yearly schedule now. Who got the assist? That's when Christmas officially begins for me. So good. Looking forward to getting into it. It's a nice busy time of FPL. So looking forward to getting into all things tonight.
Well, Mark, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show. I think since I've only been doing Who Got the Assists for 3 years, and I missed last year due to Christmas party, this is only the second time that we've actually done this live as a group, all three of us. So really looking forward to this one. I went back, I was just saying before the recording, I went back to the previous time us three were all in the studio together and our combined rank was sub 1 million. So a little bit of a different story this season, but it goes to show at least at one point we all knew what we were doing. So that's always nice to see. Anyway, as always, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's festive agenda, aside from the Christmas jumpers, we've got plenty of other festive things to get through. Game week 16, we'll have a quick look back at how we all got on, and also have a look at how Mark's rather unique season is going so far. He's taken on a bit of a different challenge, which I'm sure most of you will be aware of, but we'll have a quick rundown on that. And of course, all of the madness going around this time of year. We want to, what we also want Santa to be bringing us, identifying the perfect FPL player for the congested period. A short, I mean, Tom's written in the show notes a Grinch moment from me, but more of a cautionary tale on things to look out for with pre-match graphics. Once a year, we kind of have a bit of a reminder and I go on a bit of a 5-minute rant. So it's about that time of year where I probably do the same thing again as a quick reminder. We'll fill that in very quickly. And then, of course, we'll be moving on to our Christmas shopping list, aka Form Vs Fixtures, profiling 6 players doing the rounds this week before moving on to our 1-week punts, which Tom is, honestly, it's insane form he's on at the moment. So fingers crossed I can catch up, but I might just have to buy whichever player he's picked this week. And then on to captaincy. And finally, moving on to our teams, going into the final game week before Christmas. And then, of course, we've got that barrage of games just afterwards as well to look forward to. So I'm sure we'll be previewing that to some extent. Today is, of course, the 17th of December. It's this Wednesday. So we've got Carabao Cup going on in the background. We've got a few players involved and a few that have missed out altogether, which we might have some comments on during the show. But of course, things can happen during the recording. And we've got Crystal Palace on the Thursday with their final league game in the European group stages. So plenty to still move ahead of game week 17. But I think for now, shall we have a look back at how we got in game week 16?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, it's warm in these Christmas jumpers, isn't it? Me. Right. So yeah, top of the shop this week. Me, a huge 97. Won't someone sympathise with me? I didn't get the 100 as O'Reilly and Bruno. Neither of them got a DEFCON. No. Or they think Happy lost his Clooney? No, don't worry, I get it. But yeah, it's a stonking week for me. Up to the top 150k, which is near dreamland, considering I was 1.8 million just 6 weeks ago. Ended up failing the marshmallow test, Sam. Used all 5 free transfers, but all with good reason, and they elicited me 25 points profit. So Mateta went to Goo to enable, which lost me 2 points. But hey, you know what? I was leaning towards Raul last week, but ultimately thought, and I think from your prompting, Sam, that I could have a decent bench of 2 centre backs between like Tarko, Chow, and Anderson. So I thought that'd be right for Christmas. Let's go Goo and try to make things a bit better in the midfield and kind of reinvest the money elsewhere. Munoz did indeed go for Nkapi against your advice, Sam, which cost me a few. Or if I bought Chalobah, I'd be 100 as well.
Yeah.
Which gave me a 4-point profit because Munoz was obviously injured. Rodon was upgraded to Nico O'Reilly. I was a bit sceptical about him, but ultimately settled on him as kind of the cheapest route in City's defence, which again gave me a 4-point profit with a clean sheet. It's one off DEFCON. Minte went out for Semenyo for another 4-point profit, and I've now got him in place for the Burnley game. I almost bought Eze there. Phew, that would have been absolutely diabolical, wouldn't it, if I went there? And yeah, because I'd gone with Gu over Raul, I treated myself to Harry Wilson in for Josh King for a mighty 15-point profit. So yeah, 25 points. And plus, those are the scorers, and plus the template that Sam and I envisioned with Saka, who my captain, Bruno and Foden, all of course delivered as well. So yeah, it all came together. 97 points. Can't really complain for once, and I feel fairly optimistic, Sam. I'm not sure how to deal with this. I don't know what to do about it. It's really strange.
Yeah. Well, I remember going back, if you cast your mind back to 11 game weeks ago before the start of this run, when I think you were a little bit down in the dumps about everything, and you've strung together week on week. The first 4 or 5 was marginal progress. And I think even then you were still a bit like, this isn't great. This is kind of hard work. And it's really starting to ramp up for you now. And it just goes to show a bit of patience, make the right moves, and go aggressive at the right time as well. Last week was the perfect time for you to go aggressive. You say you failed the marshmallow test, but I mean, it looks like a pretty big win for me. So yeah, 97 points. What was your game week rank? Do you know?
It was fairly good. I think it was still 3 figures.
Okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was still pretty good though. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't 5 figures, I suppose.
It might have been. It might have been, to be fair. If I didn't have to do 2-factor authentication to get into 117k. There you go. So yeah, still 3 figures, just about.
Yeah.
Woe is me.
So right, yeah, I know. Tiny violin alert. Right, I'll move on to mine because it's not quite as spectacular. 79 points. So it was enough for a green arrow. I did make 2 moves in the end. I brought in Kelleher, which honestly I already kind of regret a little bit. Brentford just don't look likely to keep a clean sheet ever, but we'll go into that later. And I brought in O'Reilly for Senesi, who was flagged. It was 50-50 whether or not he'd play in my mind. Obviously, he's got a good fixture to come this week, but having seen the Bournemouth defence in recent weeks, I wasn't massively confident of their capabilities keeping clean sheets anyway. And O'Reilly, for me, had passed several minutes stress tests over the last few weeks. Of course, he's playing tonight, so I'll keep an eye on that ahead of his game week 17 fixture against West Ham, which is a large reason I bought him. But they combined for 9 points, which is 7 more than I would have got if I hadn't made the transfers. Elsewhere, everything very much as it was. So I picked up the same 4 double-digit returns as you. So Haaland, Fernandes, Saka, Foden, like most of the game, I suppose, right now, going towards those 4. I did have Mbermo, who was a little bit worried about not playing. He did play, but he might as well not have. Although quite unlucky on the underlying data not to get anything in that mad game. One of the games of the season, I think, if we hadn't already just seen Fulham against Man City like 2 weeks prior. Outside of that, Thiago very quiet. Anderson, not their best day at the office. But it does mean I've got 4 free transfers. And I think that's 5 green arrows in the last 6. Interestingly, though, I've not had one single game week where I've had a top 1 million game week rank so far this season. I've had, I think, 6 that are just outside 1 million, but not a single great game week. So I could really do with one of those just to really start to get me on a bit of a roll. But who knows when that's going to come. Either way, I'm happy enough with where I'm at. It's early days, but I'm in a decent position, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, turtling your way up. And you've also got kind of 4 free transfers to play with. So maybe next week will be your week to get the aggression on. And finally, Mark, you've got a very interesting setup this year. For those who don't know, you are, of course, without the big man Haaland. At the time, not having no Salah was obviously a big thing. But as someone predicted in the summer, it's probably not as big as people might have thought. big week for you this week, and up into the top 2.5 million.
Yeah, I mean, 2.5 million, you might think that's not very good. But if you were me, like both of you, the last 6 game weeks have been good. I was 6.9 million in game week 10. So there was a lot of people, there's probably still a lot of people ahead of me who don't even know what FPL is. They made a team game week 1 and they've just left it. And the ghost teams, I'm still trying to claw my way past these ghost teams. So yeah, went into this season, fancied something different, bit of a challenge. No Salah, no Haaland, go without the 2 most expensive players in the game, and just see what happens. And the first 10 game weeks almost forced me into FPL retirement. Delete team was hovered over a few times, but kept the faith. And last 6 game weeks have been probably some of the most enjoyable weeks of FPL I've had for ages. Going early on Foden, captained him twice for good hauls, triple captain Saka this game week, which went well. A roller coaster of, is it no assists, 1 assist or 2 assists? But thankfully it all worked out in the end. So yeah, things are moving in the right direction. I also, like Tom, used a lot of transfers. I used 4 out of 5. Brought in David Raya for Nick Pope. I got rid of Munoz for O'Reilly. Minte went for Szoboszlai. And Jared Bowen came in for Mateta. So just got sick of the early substitutions for Mateta. He was playing Man City. Obviously, I can't get Haaland, so next best for me was Bowen. Good guy to have this time of year, which we'll talk about later in terms of minutes. Hasn't missed a single minute all season. When I was looking at him last week, the 4 goals he'd scored, he'd got 3 bonus every time. So it was no surprise to see him pick up 2 more again here. So that was quite nice, getting the points against Villa, because he does play City next. Might even bench him. But I think a lot of people will jump to Bowen then after that, especially if Thiago continues to disappoint. So overall, a good game week, 84 points. I think I went up about maybe 700k. Game week rank was under 1 million. So you'll get one of those soon, Sam. Don't worry.
One day. I think the thing I love about your team the most, because you've obviously just got so much spare money, is you've just got Chris Woods just sat there on the bench. And
literally Deadwood.
Yeah, literally. I love that. That's so good.
I know it's I've been threatening to sell him since he got injured. I've been threatening to sell him every week, and I said I'll just wait till I get the 5 free transfers, and then I used 4, and I still somehow kept him. But I just didn't need the money. He will become Mark Guiu at some point if I need cash. But the way things are going with Isak and Cole Palmer and everything else, it's a bit of a luxury just carrying that guy on the bench and he's just draining value from out of my bank balance every week. But I mean, I like Chris Wood. I'm still hanging on to him from last season.
Yeah. You should keep hold of him all season now, I think, just to flex.
Like a mascot.
Yeah.
It's a lovely alpha move, and it's obviously very good to kind of just keep abreast of what you're doing on 59th minute, which I do listen to every week actually. Like your dulcet tones on the way home. So it kind of oddly fits the winter. I don't know why.
I always get odd comments about the podcast, like about my voice being it's a very soothing voice. It helps me fall asleep, and I'm like, not really sure that's what I want to happen. Or you get random messages from people. Like I remember getting one from a woman one time saying her husband listens to me when he's in the shower, and like just not sure about that either. So, but yeah, thanks for listening, Tom, and of course I try and catch you boys as much as possible as well. But probably don't listen to as many FPL podcasts now as I did years ago. I used to be a proper junkie, 2-3 a day, but you gotta cut back at some point.
Yeah, we've all got lives to lead at the end of the day. Although I am looking forward to Mark's bedtime stories coming out soon.
Yeah, FPL sleep stories.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. Speaking of having lives to lead, but FPL getting in the way, let's move on to the first agenda, which is calendar madness. Now, next week, I think Sam and I will dig into some details surrounding this in terms of teams and players, because we've just got too much to cover on this edition with Mark. But yeah, as flagged previously, we've got one extra midweek this time around due to FA Cup third round having this dedicated weekend in the schedule, which means there'll be a lot of tired bodies come game week 21, especially those with smaller squads and those who may not be used to midweek weekend sort of grind. So let's leave the players for now. We'll come back to that next week. or maybe we'll mention some here and there in this. And instead, think of us poor FPL managers who have to deal with this madness over this period. So to detail this, there's two ways. One is what OFPL have put out, which you can see on the screen if you're watching, and also my own way of looking at it. If you've managed the projects in the working world and you're watching, you'll recognize the Gantt chart. Just to talk you through this period, just to underline how mad it is. Don't worry, you can tune out here. I'll give you a headline at the end. So Game Week 17 is this weekend. Deadline is at 11. It lasts 3 days, taking us up to lunchtime, taking us from lunchtime, Newcastle Chelsea, all the way through to the final game on Monday, which is Fulham Forest. That's the last game before Christmas. Then we get 3 days for Christmasing. And then on Boxing Day evening, it's game week 18. And deadlines are 6:30. It's United versus Newcastle as the sole game of the day, taking us from that Boxing Day of the Friday to Sunday the 28th. The final game being Palace Spurs at 4:30. Then we get just 1 day before the next deadline in game week 19, which is Tuesday the 30th of December. The 6 p.m. deadline is four games kick off at 7:30. Including Chelsea, Bournemouth, and Burnley, Newcastle. All games are played over 3 days, but really it's 2 because there's no football on New Year's Eve. New Year's Day, there's 2 5:30 fixtures and 2 8 o'clocks as the whole game week culminates in Brentford Spurs and Sunderland City on Thursday night. And then, yes, it keeps going. We then get just 1 day again until it's another deadline, 11 a.m. on Saturday for game week 20 as Villa meet Forest. And the games of the weekend culminate in Man City Chelsea and the sole tea time kickoff at 5:30 on Sunday, the 4th of January. Is it over? No, it's not. Because guess what? We get one more 1 day turnaround. As yet again, we have a 6:30 deadline on Tuesday, the 6th of January. West Ham meet Forest at 8 p.m. that night. Most of the games take place at 7:30 or 8:15 on the Wednesday. And the end of this, to be frank, absolute slug of fixtures concludes as Arsenal face Liverpool at 8 p.m. on Thursday, the 8th of January, after which you have a week's break due to the FA Cup third round. The most wonderful time of FPL manager indeed, but whew. So yeah, if you tuned out a bit there, the headline is simply there's 5 deadlines in 20 days, 50 games in 20 days, or to put it another way, 45,000 hours of football between next Saturday and the 8th of January. Right.
Love that. Love that. That's a good note. 45,000 hours of football, did you say?
Might be 4,500 actually, but never mind.
Okay, right. I was going to say, wow. I mean, either way, that's a lot. That's a lot of football to be getting through. I mean, will no one think of the content creators? Honestly, it's just madness. How are we going to squeeze it all in? Yeah, I mean, it's the best part of the year, though, right, guys? Like this is why we like FPL. The madness, the having to think on your feet and reacting quickly. This surely is why we play the game.
Yeah, this has always been the most fun part. I say fun, it needs to go well for it to be fun, but
True.
At least the thought of it beforehand, just deadlines coming thick and fast. If things don't go well, you've got the 1 day turnaround, we go again. It's very easy to bounce back after a bad game week when you don't have to stare at it for a week, or the dreaded international breaks are always the worst. So I didn't actually realize how many just 1 days we have in between game weeks. So it's going to be pretty intense. We've obviously lost the Bonanza Boxing Day games, which is frustrating. It used to be the best day of the year. Just sit on the sofa all day long, eat, drink, and just don't move. But just one game, and the deadline being 6:30 on Boxing Day is a bit odd as well. It's certainly one that's going to have to be set as a reminder in the phone, because that's one that's easily missed. But bring it on. I think every FPL manager will need a holiday come 8th of January. Looking at that chart.
How many days break do we have after 8th of Jan, Tom? Is it like 10 days or something?
I think it's the 17th of January when we come back again. I mean, it is just going to be, it's going to, I think that because you've got that extra game week tacked on, it's just going to feel even more mad than it ever has before. And as Mark said there, like setting an alarm is going to be so important for a lot of people, just because, I mean, normally this is the time, the 3 game weeks in a week that we had a couple of weeks ago, that it tends to be when people will start to drop off. But you can only imagine how many missed deadlines they're going to be by those who are slightly less engaged than we are around that sort of time. And setting an alarm is going to be probably, especially because of I'll be traveling a lot over Christmas and New Year and everything like that. Just trying to keep on top of it is going to be very, very difficult. And I suppose stuff, when we think about kind of making deep analysis and things like that, I wonder whether, because we're in the period now where you've had lots of people making free transfers and the template does appear to have formed quite quickly, Mark, whether, there may be a case to just kind of say, often defaulting to the crowd might actually be quite a good idea in this, when we've got less time than ever before to look at kind of all those sort of niche picks that sometimes we do look at when we've got a bit more time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that can be a logical play at this time of year. I'm thinking back on previous seasons, and I used to always kind of view this just as a little survival period where you just get through it as best you can. You don't have your usual time between game weeks to, watch games, watch highlights, look at the numbers. Every decision is made, pretty quickly. And a lot of the time you'll just be going off your first instinct now. Whereas, once you get to January, February time again, there'll be a bit more overthinking put into it. And maybe that's a good thing for some people, just not having too much time to make decisions during this really busy spell. But yeah, I do kind of like the idea of, I mean, you can obviously go at it both ways, but the conservative approach, teams have converged very much so recently, and it doesn't help that, Bruno, Saka, Foden have been really good, and it just makes sense to have them. Obviously, Haaland's having a great season as well. So straight away, you've got 4 picks there. A lot of people have, double Arsenal defence. There's not much room for variation, and I do think in this really congested period, getting your usual guys who get the minutes, and most people do have a good bench now, to be fair, because we've kind of shored things up with the transfers, or those who haven't, you've got the opportunity at least to do so if you still got 3 or 4 transfers. So I do like the survival approach. Just get through it, and maybe the second half of the season then is when you can attack, when you've maybe got more time to map out plans and theory craft and that kind of stuff. So, but then you've got someone daft like me who doesn't have Haaland and can doesn't have a rank to protect, where I can maybe be a bit more creative and go on the attack. So I'm looking at players like Cherky, who's not in any teams, because a lot of people have Haaland, Foden, O'Reilly. They can't get to him, whereas I can. Doubts over Szoboszlai, for example. So I'm certainly in the market for some spicy picks over this festive period, maybe more than I would have been previously.
If you can keep your head when those around you are losing theirs, maybe you have an advantage. And I guess, Sam, it really keys into, when we do have time, us as planners, perhaps, I suppose, having a better idea of what we're doing compared to everybody else, and maybe that may be the kind of the edge we go for. Even if the picks aren't exciting, we've still got kind of a vague plan about what we're going to be doing. Is that just the hopium that we're clinging on to for this period?
Yeah, I'll be smoking that hopium pipe for a little bit longer for this week, and hoping that all of the planning that I've done up to this point, and especially like this next few days up to game week 17, I'll have a plan in place for how I'm going to tackle the Christmas period and these 4 game weeks, just to try and figure out, okay, this game week is when I'm planning on getting to, let's say, an Everton defender, or I've got a 1.5 million spare to get to Jarrod Bowen if I want to, and just have them as kind of penciled in moves as options for the upcoming game weeks, just so that I'm not going in completely fresh to every new game week. And of course, those aren't hard set plans that I need to follow through no matter what. Obviously, new information can come to light. People will get 5 yellows, people will get injured, people will get suspended. All of these things will happen. But it's quite nice to have a rough outline of what you intend to do if nothing were to go wrong. And then you can just react to the limited extra information that comes through during the weeks. And I think my ethos for the next few weeks is going to be, as long as the players, or as long as I'm confident most of the players I'm bringing in are as close to guaranteed to starting and getting 70, 80 plus minutes in each of these, then I'm happy enough with the plan. And then if there's room for a spicy pick that I'm fairly confident on the minutes of, but it may be less confident than the others, I can probably squeeze in 1 or 2 if I really want to, just given that I've got a couple more free transfers in the bank than a few other managers at the moment. But my intention, which will come as no surprise to you, Tom, is get the 90-minute men. And I still think there are enough options there that can set me apart from the rest if I really want to.
Yeah. So the perfect gift, I suppose, is the next bit. So if we were writing a letter to Father Christmas, what would be on our wish list to go in our stocking as the best FPL player that could fit these times? Mark, is his name Bruno Fernandes? And if we could have 7 of them, would we have him 7 times in our team?
Yeah, I would even go as far as saying if we could have 11 Bruno Fernandes, or maybe even 15, I would probably go that far. Yeah, he's the perfect example of a player that you want in a congested period. No minutes concerns. We know about his points potential, routes to points. We don't need to go into that. But so much of the game at this stage of the season just becomes about getting as many minutes from your 11 starters as possible. You're not going to get 90 minutes from them all, but we say it all the time and it's cliche, but you can't get points if you're not on the pitch. You can lose them, of course, if you're a defender. But yeah, Bruno Fernandes, and again, it was another example is me going for Jared Bowen last week. It's just 90 minutes every week. I don't need to worry about Jared Bowen during Christmas. Of course, it could happen. It could happen he gets one game, but that could happen to absolutely anyone in the league. And again, going with, players like Bruno, Jared Bowen, and I think I say this every Christmas when I'm on, the bench is so important. And it's much easier this year because we've just had all those transfers, those silly AFCON transfers. Now, those of us who do get benchings and 0-minute appearances, a lot of people are going to get probably decent returns off the bench, and we've already started to see that. So yeah, the 90-minute man, as Sam says, and your bench, that's the key.
I think the introduction of DEFCON as well has really helped secure those benches during this period of the year, because this time last year or any previous season, if you're looking at your bench, you're probably more often than not playing with 3 at the back and you're playing 2 defenders on your bench most weeks. Previous seasons, those defenders, it's not ideal getting them off the bench because it tends to be your 4.0 option, maybe a 4.5 as well in there, that generally speaking, you're not getting that much out of them unless they just happen to have a great run of fixtures. Even so, you're not expecting all that many miracles from them. This year, though, I'm perfectly happy going into this period with like Rodon, Anderson, if I need to. Michael Keane would be another good example. There's plenty of other 4.5s. Because of the addition of DEFCON as well, it just raises that bar for them that little bit higher, to the point where, okay, I get a random benching. I need to rely on Anderson, even if he's, I don't know, away at Newcastle or whatever. Okay, well, he's fairly likely to hit DEFCON. Same goes for Rodon. So yeah, I'll have a bit of that, and I won't panic about making transfers just to secure that starting 11 quite as much, because I'm just that little bit more comfortable with those bench options, and their floor is a little bit higher.
Yeah, I think it's just what you said the other week, Sam, about this importance of not having to look at the team sheet for your players. And if that's what you said, Mark, a minute ago, it can happen to any player, but it's where you've got a 99% confidence, like from a player like Jared Bowen all the way back to players like Anderson and Van den Berg, where you're like, well, if they don't play, like it's probably like you can't double second guess the fact that you brought this player in to be that bench man or to be that kind of solid starter over the period. I think it is the fact that we've got that extra 90, that extra kind of set of games at the very end, which probably kind of sends this into a slightly different sphere than we ever had before. And the teams playing tonight, for example, as well, in the shape of Newcastle, Fulham, Man City and Brentford, like their Christmas onslaught has kind of started now. There was some rotation for City, a little bit for Brentford, a little bit for Fulham, and a little bit for I can't remember what the team was now.
Newcastle.
A little bit for Newcastle as well, but it's not loads. And I think you will at some point be bitten. It's just a case of getting that bench in order. I think the phrase "going goo deep" may come out a few times, which obviously is an interesting one around Christmas time. But hey, there we go. And I also wonder whether there might be kind of, I don't know, maybe a renewed value in this idea of, if you don't really have enough information to do anything, it might be the case of that importance of doing nothing thing that we've spoken about on this pod so many years, Mark, that sometimes, because we're probably not going to have all of the information, we don't know what the deal is going to be with press conferences. It might be that, we have scant information. You get that on the Arsenal website. There may just be an injury list that comes out, or like some remarks from Arteta that get reported that he's just sent through to the press officer. And sometimes it may just be that you may want to make a move, but actually just make do with your bench if that's the case, because having that information, having the extra free transfer could be much more valuable than making a move and snookering yourself the next week, because I found that out many years to my chagrin.
Yeah, if in doubt, do nout is often a very effective way to play FPL, and given that a lot of us have already shored things up and freshened the team up, and the benches are, we've probably got benching headaches already. If you probably got to go into this little spell as well, aiming to bank at least once or twice, just to give yourself that little bit of flexibility going forward as well. And you probably already can, because you've set yourself up to do so. My bench this week, for example, as we'll see soon, is I think I've got Virgil and Bowen on the bench because some others have better fixtures. Yes, I've got Chris Wood, but that's just my only dead spot. I'm always going to have, as long as there's no, suspensions or injuries, 2 very usable bench options for this busy spell, and I think that's a good piece of advice. I think two good bench options is a good number to aim for. You don't necessarily need to have 3 unless you've got a very spicy team altogether. But don't ignore the bench at this point in time if you know it's needed. You might want to do something really exciting in your starting 11, but if it's a bit of a sideways move, make sure you shore things up because there will be mass rotation.
Yeah, indeed. Attitude to risk, though. You mentioned spicy picks there a couple of times. For example, next week I'm looking at buying Ekatike, for example, for Wolves and Leeds in 18-19, despite it being a min's risk. I mean, that sort of thing I think could set you apart if people are playing quite carefully, I suppose. And I'm always down for a bit of calculated risk here and there if I possibly can. And there's a 5-day gap between Wolves and Leeds, by the way, just to preview next week. So that's actually okay. But I mean, Sam, I know that you're not an unrisky manager, but you are a bit more cautious than me. Do things kind of does the needle really move towards that kind of the blue side, the cool off side more than ever before during this period?
It probably does more for this time of year than any others. I think there's plenty of times to attack and go after the spicy picks. And I'm not someone who's going to say don't go after Ekatike next week because the fixtures are crazy and the payoff could be massive. But for me, the worry would still be there that it's not going to take much for him to then be an issue again in your side. He might be okay for those 2 weeks. And because they're both plum home fixtures, I'm going to be tempted as well. I might have the money spare to move Thiago to him. And it's something I might get involved with. But I wouldn't want too many of those risks long-term in my side. So maybe a couple of weeks of it and then a plan to get away from him. As long as that's baked in, I can probably get on board with. But obviously, that's just one example. There are loads of different players out there that you might be looking at. Cherky has already also come out on this pod. If you've got Cherky plus Ekatike plus not a very strong bench, you're probably setting up for some pain at some point soon. Now, Mark, you're in a different position because you've got all that money. Your bench is way, way stronger than 99% of other managers will be. So I suppose if anyone was in a position to take a couple of high upside but risky minutes punts over this period, you would be the guy, right?
Yeah, and I think I need to follow through with that. I mean, this is probably going to be my only ever experimental season. So this is a little spell where I should have as much fun as possible. Traditionally at this point in the season, I would be looking to roll as much as possible. I would not be buying Ekatike. I would not be buying Cherky. I would just be playing as conservative as you can be. And just like I said earlier, getting through it. But I don't really care. My rank's terrible. I'm really enjoying the last 6 game weeks. I want that to continue. I've got a taste for very big green arrows and I'd like those to continue. So I probably won't roll a transfer at all over the next couple of weeks. I'm just going to jump around, mainly midfielders, I think. The way I've set things up, Bruno, Saka, Foden, and then I've got Mbeumo to sell this week and possibly the Szoboszlai injury to deal with. So I really like the idea of having those 2 midfield spots for the next 4 or 5 weeks and just jumping around. I've got 5 good defenders, so even if there's an injury, I don't need to make a transfer there. I've got David Raya in, so I just leave him there long term. And Thiago and Bowen, as long as Thiago's not injured or anything like that, even if his form doesn't pick up straight away, I'm just kind of content having those 2 up front for the long term. So I am going to have more fun this Christmas FPL-wise than I have before. And fun might not equal green arrows and points, but at least in the run-up to the game week, there'll be a lot of excitement.
Bit of retail therapy, bit of Christmas shopping. We will like it, or I guess Boxing Day sales by the time it comes around, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to wait for January sales this year. I'm going to pay the premium.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything you'll take? Sorry, this is slightly digression, but I think we've got a bit of time. Do you think there's anything you'll take from this season into how you'll play next year, Mark? If this is your only experimental season, like.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is probably just get Erling Haaland next year and just make life a wee bit easier. But no, in all seriousness, there will be. It's actually been. I find it quite interesting, just playing differently, even if it's only slightly differently. because I do end up having a lot of the same players, as the template and the other content creators, etc. But it's kind of has, I think, maybe not just yet, but when I look back in the season, I think it will give me a different perspective. I always do a bit of a Gameweek review and kind of dig into what went well, what didn't go well. And I think one thing that has drilled home to me is just how important captaincy is. I've probably always done fairly well over a course of a season on captaincy, but I couldn't hit one to save my life first 10 game weeks. And when you've got a captain like Haaland doing well, then it's like double pain. Your own captain blanks, and then the other one just smashes, and you're just 30, 40 points down almost every game week, and that's what I'm trying to claw back now. But yeah, there definitely will be some good takeaways and learnings from me, I think, this year. There's definitely been some bad luck in there, but there's certainly I've been slow to certain things as well, not getting on double Arsenal defence, first 10 game weeks and stuff like that, and maybe having a wee bit too much faith in certain players. But I'll probably deep dive into this season more so in a season review than I have done in previous, because it's definitely given me a different perspective on the game and things like that. So yeah, it's been enjoyable.
Lovely. All right. So if you're looking for your ideal Christmas player, minutes, output, defcons, importance of looking at the clean sheet, attitude to risk, use some, but calculated, and the importance of doing now if you're not entirely sure is always very handy. Right, Grinch time. So this week we were again treated to the spectre of people on social media seeing a picture of Jeremy Doku on a Manchester City pre-match graphic. And after which that emerged that he was going to be injured for quite a while, saying, "Oh, I think I've given up on trust in the pre-match graphics now." We saw evidence of this also fairly recently with Daniel Munoz pictured on the Fulham versus Crystal Palace fixture pre-match graphic before it turned out that he was going to be missing the game and then is going to be missing a bit of time with surgery. And I send you these most weeks, Sam, after the lineup has come out, just being a dick, really, asking why that player hasn't shown up and what's going on here. But yeah, this is something that really gets your go. So yeah, we thought we'd give you a moment of just getting off your chest.
Well, it's just because I've talked about it so often, and I think it's difficult because I used to be the guy making these graphics. I can tell you now, and like anyone listening to this pod, I promise you, I never once got early team news from making any of these graphics. I made them for different teams. I've never once picked up any early news from it. And the fact that we're still in 2020, well, approaching 2026, and people still think that if there's a pre-match graphic going up, it means that a player's starting, it just winds me up a little bit, because it just adds the sense of like hope where there might be none, or security where you might want to be a bit more nervous, or panic more than anything else if, let's say, there are 5 players included on it and not your guy, and it just adds to this speculation and fuel on social media. And I mean, we all know what it can get like on these different channels. It just picks up, and all of a sudden there are rumors, and it's like, oh, and Bruno wasn't pictured in training yesterday either, he must be out, and obviously he's in the starting 11 at the end of it. To, I guess, play devil's advocate for one brief second, it's been a while since I've done these. So I guess there's a world where someone like Mikel Arteta, who loves getting involved with that sort of hijinks in the pre-match stuff and taking players' photos away from the selection, clearly that's on the agenda for their photographers. There's an argument that maybe he's had a sort of a memo sent out to graphic designers saying, you know what, if you reach the week, the day of the week where you're posting the graphic or creating the graphic, and there's a doubt over a player, just, have some fun with it and don't let what you think might happen dictate. But even if that's the case, even if it has all changed since I last used to do these, what graphic designer in their own right mind would actually out any early team news using the team graphic? That would just be loss of job within minutes. Like, there's just no way that anything you can see on a team graphic is going to lead to any sort of secure team news, because either A, they don't know, which I'm telling you right now is 99% of the time, or B, they do know who's starting, which would be very weird for a graphic designer to be let in on the early team news. But if they did know, it's more likely than not that they're going to try and mess with the graphic to a point where they're throwing a bit of a spanner in the works for anyone trying to read the tea leaves there. So I just ignore it. The only possible way that I'd maybe take it on board is there are some players who clearly manage their own social media feeds. Enzo Fernandez, I think, is one where there is a bit of a pattern of he will personally post a picture of him on his story in the lead up to a game, and there is a bit of a pattern of like him starting equals Instagram post going up. But even that, I think, is speculation at best. And I honestly, the sooner we can just ignore this, the better, because the amount of people who still, you included, Tom, send me the graphic and like, oh, this must mean thingy starts.
I do it
I
jokingly.
know you do it
I
as a
do
joke,
seriously.
but yeah, it's just a wind up. I don't miss doing the graphics either. It's pressure.
Oh, we've got 5 loads of deadlines in 20 days. There's so many graphics I can send you. I can't wait. Happy Christmas, Sam. By the way, have you noticed what's Boomo doing in the team in the pre-match graphic? Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, even less information that we can trust than normal. No pressers, no pre-match graphics, no nothing. But yeah, don't trust those guys. Right, on to the Christmas shopping list, which we've awkwardly rechristened Form Vs Fixtures this week. And we may well do next week in terms of this. 6 players to run through who are in FPL Manager's thoughts ahead of the game week ahead, and also for the next few weeks. The very first one, of course, is Antoine Semenyo. Is he the apex 1 week punt? So many transfer people's pockets, Mark, and a few targets in and around his price. Should managers treat themselves for Antoine for Burnley?
Short answer is yes. I've earmarked him for a wee while. I've like many enjoyed his points at the start of the season, and then he tailed off a wee bit. I was hoping he wouldn't score against Manchester United just to keep him on the down low. But when you see Burnley at home for any attacker, it makes a lot of sense to at least think about buying them. So I knew Brennan Boom was going to be heading off at this point, and I just feel like Semenyo is the easiest, most obvious replacement for him. And I like sticking to a plan in FPL. There's plenty of other exciting options out there, which we'll talk about as well. But I haven't made any moves yet on Wednesday night. I'm probably not going to do any until at least Thursday night because I think price changes are okay. And feels like I've got about 150 million of a budget this season anyway, so I don't need to rush. But yeah, Semenyo, I like him not just for Burnley. I like him for Brentford the week after as well. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to bring him in this week for Mbumo for a 2-week punt. I say it's a punt. I don't think it's even a punt. We know how good this player is. I like the fixtures. He can be talismanic at times, and then probably jump off him when he plays Chelsea game week 19, maybe even for someone else on this list at that point.
It's great having you on the pod because that you've just said exactly what I wanted to say, almost word for word, and I don't need to add a section to that. I think, yeah, Burnley, then Brentford. The yellow card thing is the only thing I might add, that if he does get suspended this week, we can remove him a week early for someone like Cunha, but otherwise, absolutely fine for the next 2, right?
Yeah, not worried about yellows. I went, Sabosla last week on 4 yellows. And again, we've got good benches, so even if it does happen, you don't necessarily have to sell these guys. But yeah, keeping things simple. Semenyo, Burnley at home, easy decision for me.
Yeah. Any temptation on Tav?
Not really. No. Not going to chase those points. He was really good against United, but Tav is not Semenyo.
Yeah, agreed. Tom?
Yeah, I own him, so it's fine for me. Decent amount of shots recently. Not the best for XG over the last kind of 6. To the eye, he's been performing all right. He's been very unlucky, hasn't he, to miss out on points. And just at the very end of the United game, he could have got an assist for David Brooks. So, I mean, it could have been double-digit haul potentially if he'd got a bit of bonus. Kluivert's back. So maybe penalties may not be his anymore. But I mean, we simply don't know about that one. But I mean, it stands to reason when it comes to Burnley, Street's behind everybody else as the worst defence in the league, unfortunately. Second worst, the worst XGC away from home as well. Bournemouth actually the second worst XGC away, which probably won't surprise anybody who's had Senesi for the last little while. But I mean, I think if you look at it, it has to be those 2 weeks, I think. And if you do have transfer in the bank, it's worth doing. I suppose the question might be for you guys, if you maybe have one free transfer and you're
Mhm.
planning to do something else next week, would you be using that on Semenyo this week, regardless because of the fixture being so good, or would you be taking a more long-term perspective, despite the fact the fixtures are quite congested? I know that a lot of people are in that boat who maybe like me and like Mark have failed the marshmallow test, used a lot of transfers, found themselves unlike me without Semenyo, and just gone, oh crap, I probably need to get that guy in. Which way do you swing on that one?
I think if I had less free transfers or fewer free transfers, I would be looking at Cunha or Szoboszlai straight away. If Szoboszlai is fit for this week as well, I would be more than happy to just go straight to them, because I think they are long-term picks that I would happily hold on to for a longer stretch. But yeah, given that I do have 4, I can do 1 or 2 weeks on Semenyo, then get to Szoboszlai or Cunha ahead of when their fixtures truly do become pretty great. Mark, would you feel the same sort of way?
I like playing the game week just right in front of me as much as possible, and it's not always, long-term planning is obviously very important. But if I ever get to a game week and maybe I haven't planned to get Semenyo in, but if I get there and then I see the fixture and I see a lot of people going there when he's already in plenty of teams, it's almost insurance in a way.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get burned by a 15 pointer, not to say he's going to get 15 points, he could just as easily blank, of course. But I don't like leaving myself open to that on a player like Semenyo when he plays Burnley. So even if I wasn't planning to get him this week, and I got there and I said, actually, I do want this guy, then I probably would just pull the trigger and get him in.
No, fair enough. I think it's just one of the things you got to weigh up, because obviously so many things muddied the water this year, and 5 FTs and what you had to do with your own personal team has messed with things so much that it's hard to give mainstream advice. But I mean, if I was faced with kind of getting a longer term pick in these days, compared to how I used to be, I would just be like, yeah, just get some menu and deal with it later. I think now, because Sam has incepted me to think a bit more about the longer term side of things,
Sorry.
I would know it's probably for the best, to be fair. I would probably give a lot more consideration to Acuna, and I showed it last week, right? Because I could have. I was talking to you about it, Sam, wasn't on the Friday. I was like, I really, really could get Eze in for the Wolves game, and
Yeah.
how would I be feeling now if I hadn't have done that? So sometimes it is worth thinking about a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying, obviously that's just one example, and it might all kind of factors point to Bournemouth doing over Burnley, but all factors points to Arsenal doing over Wolves. You just can't know sometimes. But as Mark says, I mean, it's put yourself in that position to be lucky, and don't expose yourself to that risk if you possibly can. And so maybe just have a plan for in a couple of weeks, maybe moving him on, because he's at such a good price, and his kind of fixtures running out do coincide with the fixtures coming round for Man United, and specifically Matheus Cunha. So second goal of the season. I feel like he's kind of going through this kind of process, Mark, where he kind of a log jam starts to be created. The dam starts to be kind of steadily more and more pressurized with water, and something will go with the goal in the wild 4-4 draw of Bournemouth. And difficult couple of games coming up with high-flying Villa and then a stuttering Newcastle coming up, but should have the minutes. Top 10 for non-pin XG in the last 6 game weeks, and been threatening to erupt for a while, as I said, and he's definitely going to have a lot of responsibility. And that real prize, I guess, is the Wolves, Leeds and Burnley games from the end of this year going to the start of next, and really good pacing, Mark, between those games too. So you imagine, but you have the minutes anyway, but he'll have a lot of rest as well. Got that X factor as well, doesn't he? So, I mean, is he a player that you're looking to bring in? I'm assuming he's top of the list for you.
Certainly on the radar, yeah. And if I wasn't to go Semenyo this week, I could just go straight from Mbeumo to Cunha. But there's a lot of different factors at play here. First of all, he's been really good last couple of weeks and should have a lot more FPL points from those performances. But I'm a little bit worried about United, how we're going to function with Mbeumo and Ahmad gone from the right-hand side. They've been really effective together. I'm not really sure what that's going to mean for the team overall. So when there's a bit of uncertainty there, and when it's Villa and Newcastle next, two very competent teams, I'm a little bit, worried about these fixtures, and I don't want to be doubled up on the midfield for Villa Newcastle. Now, different story when Wolves rolls around in Gameweek 19. I will be, quite happy to go there then. And you look at this little table you've put together, Semenyo for 2 weeks and then Cunha against Wolves. When Semenyo has Chelsea, it just feels like one of the easiest, switches you could ever make. But those who have Cunha already, I think you're in a good spot and you hold them. And I wouldn't stop anyone from buying him against, Villa this week either. He, hopefully his goal share and his assist share goes up a wee bit as well with some of the other guys away. But yeah, as a United fan, and I've played FPL for a long time, I don't get too optimistic too quickly. We've had some very weak opponents recently, which have made us look probably better than we are.
Mm-hmm.
You rip out the whole right-hand side of the team, and I think we'll be a lot less effective, because I think Ahmad's been really good in the right wing-back role.
Yes.
We know how good Mbumo is, and I just don't know what it's going to look like. So I hope Cunha continues to do well, but I will probably wait until Game Week 19 for him.
Fair enough. Any other United options not called Bruno Fernandes or Matheus Cunha of interest over this period? I know that kind of in the cheap brackets, I saw Mason Mount's name being bandied around, a player that Amram's been quite effusive in praise of. But there's injuries and the minutes aren't that great. I mean, anything defensively or anything, Sesko, anything like that you'd kind of mention here, Mark, in terms of United?
Certainly can't touch the defense. You just, they're right down there in terms of, not trustworthy. New goalkeeper this season, he's been okay. Defense changes a lot. I think there's a lot of defenders there that are maybe not good enough, and we just conceded 4 to Bournemouth. So what more evidence do you want in terms of avoiding? We've got Arsenal, we've got Palace, we've got other teams with good fixtures. Everton fixtures are changing soon as well. Liverpool have improved a little bit, so I just think you stay as far away from Manchester United defenders and goalkeeper as you can. Bruno's obviously fantastic. Cunha's looking really good, and I think that's it for the time being.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well.
Yeah, Mason Mount's been really good, and I think we are a much better team when he's in the starting 11. I think he's arguably one of the most important players because he knits everything together. He's one of the best pressers.
Well,
yeah. I love the player. I wish he got more minutes. Injuries have curtailed him a wee bit since he came from Chelsea, but Amram loves him as well. He's only about maybe 5.96 million, but that might be tempting to some people. But Bruno, Saka, Foden +2 or +1, he doesn't get in there.
And that description in of itself makes me think not an FPL asset. We're not here to get PPDA points. Those don't exist in FPL, sadly. Right, okay. On to the next one. Cheeky Churky, already come up a couple of times. Doku out according to Pep, but do we believe you, Pep? Until 2026.
Just check the graphics, mate. Just check.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. So a 2-3 week punt for games taking in West Ham, Nottingham Forest, and Sunderland the next 3. I wonder. We'll talk about the best triple city in a minute. I think that's probably going to be fairly straightforward. But I wonder whether, for those who haven't bought Foden, Sam, or haven't taken the plunge on O'Reilly yet, more importantly, could he be a really interesting zag for a few people? He's got the most assists in the league, including FPL assists. And I think the underlying data is like something like 1 XG, 3.5 XGA. So more of an assist than a goal scorer. But yeah, I mean, could he be an interesting one for people who are in that situation? Someone like Mark, for example.
I mean, look, if I didn't have triple city and I was in the market like I am now with a few free transfers and looking for a 1 week punt, he would be right up there with Semenyo for me this week. He's not got the goal threat, but my God, he's exciting to watch. Like, he is such a joyous player to actually physically watch. And at the end of the day, FPL is about watching the football as well, to a certain extent. I would love to own him. And if I'm on a free hit later on in the season and the stars align and City have got a good fixture, then I would be very tempted. But we all know what I'm about to say. I'm not confident enough of the minutes. Maybe if there were more injuries, possibly, but it's a bit like O'Reilly earlier on in the season for me. I'd need to see almost a consistent rate of like minutes holding up against expectations before I went there. O'Reilly's passed that test to this point, and I got more confident as the season went forward. Cherky's right at the start of that journey at best. I think he's had like 2 80+ minutes in a row in Premier League terms. He started again tonight, didn't he? Got brought off 60-ish minutes. I would be very surprised if he played all of this Christmas period. However, if I was looking for a 1 weeker against West Ham at home, I reckon he does very, very well. So yeah, it depends what you're in the market for, but yeah, if I'm still looking at a third City player and I wasn't doing what Mark's doing and ruling out Haaland, for instance, it would still be Foden and O'Reilly. Even another City defender as well. You could look at Nunez or even Gvardiol possibly over Cherky at this point, and I wouldn't scoff at either of those.
I want this guy and I want him ASAP, and there's every chance it could happen this week. So Mbeumo to Semenyo is definitely happening. And I've still got another free transfer. Szoboszlai is a doubt, although sounded fairly positive today that he's recovering well and they're hopeful that he's going to be available for Tottenham. And it's funny, I think this is, again, I'm allowing myself to have more freedom this season. If I, go back to this time last year, if I just bought Szoboszlai, I would not be selling him for the next 4 game weeks. But I am very excited about Cherky and the prospect of owning him when a lot of other people will not own him. That's there's not many positives of not owning Haaland, but one of them is it does open a door for a Cherky when a lot of people's doors are already closed because they've got O'Reilly, Foden, Haaland. And I just love the player. He's been so fun to watch. I've been aware of him for a couple of years just through some other fantasy platforms. So I'm not surprised to see how well he's settling in. I am fairly bullish on his minutes. I'm not going to say he's going to play every game or start every game, but I just think the way he's playing at the moment that he kind of has to play as much as possible. Doku does seem to be injured. Pep's not rotating as much as he maybe would have done in previous times. And yeah, it's funny because I bought Szoboszlai last week. I built him up in my mind all week. I was really excited to own him. Then he blanks, then he gets a knock, and I'm already, just looking at shiny new toys. And that's definitely part of the 5 free transfers we just got. So even if it comes out on Friday that Szoboszlai's fit, I still think I might just jump and just do what I want to do and just do what's going to make me the most excited for the weekend. And that's owning Cherky, who is an absolute joy to watch. He's got a high ceiling. Foden, Cherky, O'Reilly seems like a pretty good triple up to go against the Haaland owners.
Yeah, break the box, Mark. Break the box. Have that 1 year when your voice becomes less soporific and more excited and more enthusiastic. You want that Friday when you're like, well, you know what? I'm actually buying Cherky, and everyone kind of wakens from their slumber with the start. No, I think that sounds awesome. I really hope you go that way. Speaking of Szoboszlai, let's do Liverpool's main man, Ekitike, or I'm going to call him Palindrome from now on. Write his name out front to back and write his name up back to front, and it spells exactly the same. That's Hugo Ekitike. Back-to-back double-digit returns and price rises to complement it. And Spurs, Wolves and Leeds, the final 2 being at home, and the good spacing as well. It's just so appetizing. I wish I'd get there this week, but definitely in the mix for next week. Similar to kind of what you were saying about Cherky playing very well and just probably needing to play. I mean, Liverpool need points. Isaac stuttering. Surely it's all coming up, Hugo. Last year underperformed his data, actually. This year was overperforming. Last year was underperforming. But that last year was only really his first year as a solid starter after a fairly nomadic few years in his career. Football manager players will know he was at PSG, and before that he was somewhere else. And I'm not sure you can read anybody reading the tea leaves, believe anybody reading the tea leaves on him, because we simply don't know. This is kind of second year as a kind of a full-time pro. What we do know is he was top of the shop for underlying data in Bundesliga last year for Frankfurt, which is really cool, and that's why the Premier League, Champions League clubs are in for him. And doing all right in the data, not massively so. 1.8 XG, 4 goals in the last few. There may be some who may be saying, if he hadn't got back-to-back braces, may not be looking at him. But the fact is that Wolves and Leeds, 2 home fixtures back-to-back is huge. He was always an option. So it's almost a bit sad. We've spoken about this already with Semenyo. It's a bit sad that he's done that because many more will be interested now. I just wonder, whether, Sam, because people are going to need to do surgeries to their teams or lose highly owned players. So for me, I'd have to sell Thiago to get there. And potential Mins risk. Does that make him maybe too rich for some people's blood? I don't know. I'm willing. If I had to make a decision tonight, I would be definitely doing it. But I've got an extra week to think about it. What's your view on Ekatike, aka Mr. Palindrome?
I mean, I think there's a half decent chance that we're sat on the pod on Monday and I'm discussing whether or not I actually do buy him ahead of the next two fixtures. I think although Spurs is a decent fixture, it's a nice enough excuse for me not to just jump in on it immediately. It's like I said near the start of the pod, it's a very anti-me pick for this time of the year. Maybe later on in the season I'd be more bullish, but it doesn't really suit the way I like to play at this time of year. Just the minutes are quite, I suppose, I was going to say patchy, but actually with the injuries they've got, Salah not being there, maybe we should be a bit more bullish on the minutes. Maybe they're not that bad. I mean, he did pull up with a bit of cramp after 70 odds in game week 16, which might, again, be a little bit of concern considering the fixtures do come thick and fast. But the upside's there. He's shooting on sight. And like with those two fixtures, you want a little bit of the Liverpool attack. And I mean, I might be on spot slide this time next week anyway. But out of the two, I would definitely prefer the genuine Liverpool attacker rather than one that can at times even play right back. So yeah, I suppose the bigger discussion is one from last week as well, where I'm just not massively convinced on the value for the forwards this year. I mean, Ekatike probably will need to get a couple of returns to be good value for money most weeks, like 8.6 million when you've got, I mean, in isolation, one return a week for 8.6 million is obviously very good. But when you've got the likes of Foden, Bruno, Saka, Haaland to all squeeze in anyway, then it's quite difficult to also find a route for Ekatike that also provides value for money elsewhere without sacrificing too much. So, yeah, I might have 1.5, 1.6 million spare this time next week, and it might be a fun little 2-weeker for me. But I would do so with caution.
The risk of sounding like I'm speaking from privilege. I have all those players, and I've also got Semenyo that I can sell to get to them. So it's kind of doable for me. But I mean,
it's doable. I can get there, but it's how many sacrifices are you making?
I mean, it's the only the sacrifice would be Thiago, who has Bournemouth. I think it's Bournemouth and Spurs, 2 home games. So you'd be taking that on with Ekatike for a couple of weeks. We'll maybe discuss a bit more next week, but at the moment, I'm very keen on him as a short-term pickup. As a man without Haaland, Mark, I mean, this surely is gold dust to you.
Yeah, you would think so, but I'm struggling to get there with Ekatike. I felt like Sam was me there just talking. I'm like just nodding along. I feel exactly the same. The forwards, the value. I like having a stacked midfield. I've got the way I've kind of set things up with the 4 transfers. I've got that really fun stacked midfield that I can move the pieces around. No, it's not too difficult for me to get to Ekatike. Obviously, I could cut ties with Chris Wood, and it's not a massive stretch. Would probably need to be a -4 though next week if I use my 2 frees this week. I could, of course, be a bit more patient and just keep Szoboszlai, just get Semenyo this week, and then leaves the door open for Ekatike next week, which again, the old FPL General would probably have done this week. I think when it comes to it, if Ekatike looks good again, gets the minutes in this Tottenham fixture, I know when I get to next week, it'll be like Cherky this week. I will want them for Wolves and Leeds. And maybe I just do take a -4 at that point and get him. But I'm struggling to get there. I'm not in a rush to move money from midfield into attack. I'm still okay with Thiago. Obviously, we're all monitoring that situation in terms of form and everything else. But Bowen, Thiago, a stacked midfield, a good bench, I'm okay with that. And if I end up not going for Ekatike at all, even if a lot of people go there for Wolves and Leeds, I'll still be fairly confident that my 11 can do okay without him.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Tom, can I just note before we move on, like look at the points for Ekatike, 68 so far this season. He's had fairly patchy minutes, right? But 8.6 million. The next player we're about to mention is 3 million cheaper, has 10 more points and also had patchy minutes at the start of the season. So that's like that's the value conundrum I'm having with a player like Ekatike at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, Wolves and Leeds is all we need to know.
Yeah. I might go there myself, but yeah, I'm
hoping all of you boring lot tie yourselves in knots and let me have the points. That's all I want you to do. Just keep pushing the line of caution, guys. And I'm sure I'm going to end up losing out to Jared flipping Bowen doing well, aren't I here? Anyway, on to Harry Wilson. What a run he's on. Superb technical quality of James and Planet FPL. He kind of said something to me, which was a bit of an epiphany for him, obviously. It was much sooner than mine, but when he said it, I was like, oh my god, you were so right, James. He was like, he's actually really slow, and I was like, yes, that is completely correct. When I was watching the game back, I was like, when he was through on goal, we were like, I was expecting him to sprint off into distance, just kind of plodding slowly, like the sloth meme. But yeah, superb technical quality, Harry Wilson, what the kids call ball striking ability, I believe. The third highest point scorer in the last 4, behind Bruno and Foden. Your man Dominic Calvert-Lewin is in 4th, Sam.
My man.
But at that price, with Dewsbury Hall out, I just wonder, given the movement towards him, whether there is a case to just hold your nose and go for it if Dewsbury Hall is actually properly out. If you're looking for a cheap midfielder, or do you go elsewhere? I did have a look at the underlying data, of course, in the match logs. Obviously, there's a small sample alert, but it's 3 goals and 3 assists from 0.8 xg and 1.5 xa, which points to somebody in a mad purple patch. Could have had more versus Burnley, it's worth saying. Missed a 1-on-1 fairly early on. 20 for technique and Football Manager, effectively, is kind of the way I put it. I don't know, Mark. It's one of those strange ones, isn't it, where you're looking at it and if you're not an owner and being like, maybe that's just that ship has sailed, and I'm going to let that one go. But there are a lot of people going there this week, aren't there? I'm sure you've had lots of questions on it already.
Yeah, probably the most questions for the podcast this week was about Harry Wilson, and it reminds me of I mentioned this today as well, Jesse Lingard and Almiron. Sometimes players just go on a heater and you can't explain it, and you just have to kind of give up to the powers that are at force and just get on it for a wee while, get some points and jump off again. And I still think it's okay to go there this week, because Forest home, West Ham away to me is absolutely fine. But personally, I'm not going to do it. He's going to slow down. We can't get the points that have just happened. Fulham are getting hit pretty hard AFCON wise as well, with Iwobi, Chukwueze, Bassi. So that's going to probably have an impact as well. So yeah, it's amazing for those who had him. And Tom, loved that transfer that you made last week. That is one of the most Tom transfers I've ever heard. They don't usually work out, but this time it did.
That's very true.
But yeah, that was, that's as sweet as it comes when you just back something. And obviously you had the fixture to do it. But yeah, it's fine to go there. I'm not going to go there, and I really hope he just calms down.
That's a polite way of saying I wish he just F off, effectively. It looks like he's playing the full 90 tonight by the looks of it. So on the pitch as we record Newcastle Fulham. Yeah, we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, Sam, he's a decent sort of cheap pick. I suppose if you are in the market now, it really is kind of Elliot Anderson. Because it's the festive pod, we've got to know that Enzo Lafise, who's at 4.9, and the top cheap player according to FPL Review in terms of EV. His initials spell Elf. So if you do want a proper festive pick, it's got to be Enzo Lafise. Also, Xhaka kind of hanging around as well. But yeah, I don't know. If you're looking for a really cheap player, I guess you'd probably sort of point people towards Anderson, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would for very long term. If you've got Anderson already, yeah, I think he matches up to Wilson perfectly well, and long term he'll do just fine. A bit like what I said right at the start of the season. Anderson probably won't be the top point scoring 5.5 across the season, but he'll be in the top 3 or 4, and picking or guessing the correct others that are above or near him is going to be pretty tough. Whereas with him, it's just so solid, you can take that to the bank. Wilson right now looks like the pick at that price, and situational. If you had Dewsbury Hall and he's out, It makes absolute sense. Or if you had Szoboszlai and he's injured for a couple of weeks and you could downgrade him and free up the funds to make an upgrade elsewhere that you really wanted to, again, great, good pick, makes sense. And like Mark said, these players do go on hot streaks sometimes. Sometimes it's not all that easily explainable, and you just ride that wave for a little bit, and you don't need to figure out the science behind it every single time. There is such a thing as form. It's just quite hard to predict when that form will come and go. What I would say though is, and I think we all agree on this, for every Almiron, Lingard and Chris Wood out there, there are also hundreds of other examples that we instantly forget because they don't continue that patch of form all that long, and it's just a game week or two. Wilson's has now stretched 4 weeks, I think, where the form's been really quite decent, and obviously the minutes will probably continue to be decent because the form's been good. But we know that historically it's not going to take much for him to get reduced minutes. We've got that really tight turnaround coming. I think you've noted, I haven't checked myself, but he played very good minutes tonight. I think, look, if I had a spare transfer and a bit of a hole to fill in around that price point, absolutely. If I've got Mbermo, and if I really wanted to do something with a spare 2.5 million, again, Wilson would be on the menu. I just don't feel like he's a necessity. If I was picking between him or Anderson right now, and I needed to buy one of them fresh, I'd go Wilson. Because you chase that dragon a little bit and just don't. You put yourself in a position to get lucky. With Anderson, you're never gonna, or very rarely going to spike a huge haul. It's just going to tick along pretty well for a long time. With Wilson, you do have that opportunity, and because the crowd are also going there, if you're not on him, you've got more of an opportunity to get unlucky in a big way. So, yeah, I'm a bit jealous. I'm a bit scared of not having him this week, but I'm not going to rip apart my plans for a player that long-term I'm not massively confident in the returns for. And again, last week made loads more sense because it was Burnley. This week, it makes slightly less more sense because Burnley's gone and it's Nottingham Forest. And then the week after that, well, you've only got one fixture left in the run. So I don't know if the ship sailed, but it's less appealing than it was this time last week.
Fun fact, he's never hit over 100 points in FPL, Harry Wilson.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll need a cheap.
This year.
Yeah, maybe. I'll need a cheap player next week. So I'm looking forward to debating Enzo Lafie and Xhaka. Yeah, anyway, let's leave that one for now. Final one here. Chalobah, I was like 1,000,000%, Mark, convinced he was in your team. I don't know why. I've got no idea why. I think in my head, I just heard you and your accent saying Trevoh Chalobah. I'm not going to do it because that'd be really insulting. But in your accent, in my head, I'm sure that you've said several times Trevoh Chalobah, and he was in your team and he scored lots of points. And I was completely spewed of that notion today. But yeah, I mean, he just keeps rolling along, doesn't he? This year, I mean, he's just been the bane of my existence in my mini league, and just can't stop scoring points.
Yeah, I wish I had him in my team. It's he's been nowhere near it, and that will probably continue, much to my demise. He's just, it's like Mark Gahey at Crystal Palace. They're so frustrating if you don't have them because they just keep doing it. It's so obvious to just go and get them, but you know what happens if you do, and that's when he'll start to tail off. But he's gone up to 5.5 now. He's fairly expensive for compared to what he was at the start. Having a great season. Chelsea have turned out a very good number at clean sheets, but I would say they've been fortunate on quite a few occasions to get those. Watching the games, they very often nearly give it up. And the main thing here is fixtures. They're going into a pretty tricky, I think it's a 4-game run where I don't see a huge amount of clean sheets. So again, it's one of those, Chalobah is one of those that I won't be chasing what's already happened, and I'll be hopeful that clean sheets slow down a wee bit. I was between David Raya and Sanchez last week for my Nick Pope replacement, and it was mainly fixtures for Chelsea that put me off Sanchez because he has been really good value, but I felt more comfortable going with David Raya. So yeah, Chalobah, another one where he's really annoying, and I hope there's no clean sheets in the next 4.
Yeah, because if there are, it will be painful, really painful. I think game week, is it game week 22, Tom? The
Yes.
fixtures really turn for Chelsea.
They
I'll
do.
be interested then.
Yeah, that's why I've got. I mean, that was kind of part of the reason for Hincapié, to be honest, that I could get to Calibre pretty much as a straight swap. I think it's kind of near enough there. Maybe the train will keep going, but we shall see. But yeah, just one to throw in. I think we threw him in last week as well, and since then he's risen 0.3 million. So there you go. Right, really quick 1 week punk update. Just because it's just me and Sam, and obviously Mark's here too. But yeah, as Sam mentioned last week, I did have a really well bet there for some reason. But I did have Wilson, who scored 16 points, which is great. 106 points for me overall, 67 for you, Sam. And this week I've gone for a cheeky Cherky pick because why not?
Yes.
Why not?
Love it.
And
love it.
yeah, you've gone obviously for the other one.
Yeah, I've gone for the other punt that we're all looking at this week, Semenyo. I'm surprised I haven't picked him so far this season, but yeah, Burnley at home doesn't come any better than that, and he's my likely transfer in as well. So I'm doing what you did last week, Tom, and hoping for double jeopardy and getting the haul both in my team and on the 1 week punt as well. Fingers crossed.
Lovely stuff. Right. Back to the captains, back into captaincy, triple captaincy, etc., etc. Who's driving our sleigh? This get no, sorry, let's not do that. So I suppose me and Sam both on Haaland. I think the argument would be that, you know, if you go in Haaland triple captain, I think that's probably going to be a fairly hefty effective ownership this week. Hoping it doesn't tip over 200, but I would not be surprised if it does. Mark,
I'm rested midweek. Sorry.
That's all right. Some hoping for you, Mark. Over the last 4 weeks, Foden has scored 55 points. Haaland scored 31. And over the past 10 weeks, Haaland's better off by just 2 points. But obviously, it's all driven by the most recent back-to-back double-figure scores for Phil before game week 13. His recent return was basically a sole assist versus Bournemouth in game week 10. But yeah, I mean, Phil is on fire. West Ham's defense will be terrified, and I'm sure he's going to get your armband this week, isn't he?
Yeah, I think it's the most obvious thing for me to do. I've enjoyed the last 4 game weeks with him. I captained him 50% of the time in those. I was actually tempted by triple captain this week, but I decided on Saka last week, which was just, again, sticking to the initial plan, which is often, you know, a good idea, and it paid off quite nicely. I really like this fixture for City. And yeah, even if Cherky comes in, there's slight temptation on a Cherky captaincy. There's slight temptation on a Semenyo captaincy against Burnley, but I'm pretty sure it'll go on Phil Foden and just keep things simple.
I think any of those three are great. I'd be tempted on Semenyo as well, personally. I think that could work out nicely, but yeah, love it.
Yeah, I guess there's also Thiago potentially. I mean, more be chance than Haaland over the last 6, but that obviously includes penalties. And the only thing that I would say on this is don't vice captain Foden if you captain Haaland. Just it's good practice, just in case something happens to that game. You know, there's a freak storm or something in Manchester. Just, you know, we've seen it happen before. Just bear that in mind. But there'll be more than enough good vices on there. And if you have your triple captain to go, I think this probably is a good time to do it. Honestly, yeah, nods all round. Right, let's move on to our teams then for this week. I've got very little to say on mine. I'm rolling, and the door is open for 2 routes here, which is Ekitike in for Thiago. I'm happy to take him for Wolves and Leeds. Take Ekitike for Wolves and Leeds after this, and take on Thiago for at least a little bit. I can always go back if I want to. And Semenyo then would go down to a cheaper 90-minute man like Anton or a Xhaka. Or I'd do a straightforward Semenyo to Cunha. We'll talk about it next Monday. Not sure what I'll do yet, but obviously having spaffed 5 free transfers next week makes a lot of sense to roll this week, and I look in very good shape. So I'll leave it there, I think. Nicely covered. And
just on your team, Tom, how you feel about see Hincapié? Do you think you're going to get a good couple of weeks out of him?
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, Gabriel, mixed messages about his fitness. It's fair to say. I don't think we're going to, because of the time, the congestion of the fixture period isn't really conducive to reintroducing a player who needs to regain match sharpness, and that's what would worry me a little bit, especially with someone who's as integral to our team, our defense as Gabriel is. I've seen some people saying, you know, let's get rid of the double Arsenal defense because of X, Y, and Z. There's not been very good recently. I know that there's only been was it 1 clean sheet in the last 3 or 4? But with Calafiori and Saliba coming back, who are close to match fitness, I think that we'll see a bit more stabilisation there for the time being. Hincapié is a competent defender. No Gabriel, but he's a competent defender. Adam Pritchard on Clash Correspondence did point out, lack a bit of leadership, but there we go. I think that, probably we might see Gabriel start to be reintroduced kind of around kind of early January, so maybe game week 21. But I suspect kind of around game week 22 is when we'll kind of start to see him come back. That's kind of my own hunch. It's not based on anything at all. It might be that Gabriel's kind of back on the bench this weekend, and then I'll be looking over my shoulder a little bit. But I am fairly confident in the congestion that I'll have Piero for a little while.
Yeah, I think that was a good pickup by a lot of people last week. I think, and again, it's just one of those. It's not a problem until it is, and you just write it out, and you hope you get your double clean sheets. And any week where shit does hit the fan, you've got good bench options there anyway. If he was to get a 0 minutes, so yeah, and Nketiah, I've got Timber, obviously quite happy, especially if Ben White's injured now. But Nketiah is probably still an okay pickup as well for people. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I thought that Timber was just at the end too expensive and just kind of constrain the flexibility too much. If I wanted to move like Ekatike or even move from Semenyo to Cunha, it was just too much invested. So
yeah,
there you go. Let's move on to is it your team next, Mark? I think it might be. Yeah. Yes, that looks like yours. So obviously
it looks like a Haalandless team there, yeah.
It does. You've got Bumo to get rid of, and you've also got to find out what's going on with Szoboszlai. There's been mixed messages. There was a fake, I think what probably was a fake going around the other day that he was out until January, attributing the wrong James Pearce as the source of the information that got picked up by about 10 million copycat accounts on X, as is the nature of X these days. So yeah, a couple of moves to make. It sounds like you're kind of quite you've honed in on what you want to do.
Yeah, and I always feel like when things go well, I've got a lot more clarity and I'm a lot more decisive. So first 10 game weeks were a disaster and you're just scrambling, you overthink everything. But look, because the last few weeks have been good, I want to get Semenyo, I want to get Cherky, and I'm just going to do it, I think. And I'm going to captain Foden, and hopefully another green arrow follows. But I know this week's going to be tricky because, triple captainers on Haaland. I expect him to do well this week, as I do every week. But it's still possible to get green arrows without him because I've got a pretty good team. So at the moment, 2 free transfers available. Raya, Timber, double up. Hopefully that goes better this week. Senesi's back, which is good for the Burnley fixture. O'Reilly and Anderson currently in the starting 11. So I've got a 4-5-1 at the moment. Saka, Bruno, Foden, as most teams have, and should probably try and get to if you don't already have. Foden has the armbands. Mbumo goes for Semenyo at some point this week. Szoboszlai, I kind of hope it doesn't come out that he's fine, because then I'm going to second guess myself. So I am pretty sure whatever happens, I'm just going to follow my gut feeling like I did with Foden 4 weeks ago and just get Cherky, have O'Reilly, Cherky, Foden captain for the Man City West Ham game so I can actually watch it, and hope Haaland is assisting the assister. And then up front is Thiago away to Wolves, which looks good on paper. And I'm probably going to bench Bowen this week and Virgil. Quite comfortable with that. Got the Bowen points last week. If I'm backing O'Reilly to do well and get a clean sheet, there's no point playing Bowen. And Virgil has been Virgil for a long time now. As poor as Tottenham have been, I'm quite comfortable benching Virgil and playing Anderson over him. So, yeah, I think once this team gets updated later in the week with both of your guys' punts of the week, which is quite nice to see, some confirmation bias there for me. I will be confident going into the game week, but of course, a lot will depend on how Erling Haaland does.
I must say, if I was going without Haaland, that is the exact 11 I'd want, like with those two included. Tom, would you agree with that? I can't think of any player I'd rather have.
I mean, Harry Wilson's obviously the player of the year.
Of course. Yeah.
Ballon d'Or.
How could I forget?
The Ballon d'Or, I think, probably more likely. But yes, no, that is a very, very good team. And I that's why I put Cherky in some week punts. I was like, that's a one player I wish I could get.
I don't know if he's have you seen his goal tonight?
Yes, it's a
yes.
one hell of a hit. He should shoot more, shouldn't he?
That also helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe he'll start taking more pot shots now. That would be nice for him as well. Right. Well, finally, last and probably least, my team, I'm currently in a 4-4-2. I've got Mbumo as my only real issue this week. Kelleher in goal, I've already explained. I'm not like not massively fanboying over that move anymore, but it does allow me the money to do other things elsewhere. So I'm going to ride that wave for a few weeks, see how it goes. If it's a disaster, then I've got a good break glass and emergency in game week 22 with Chelsea, so I can get to Sanchez pretty easily. But yeah, not overly enamored with that. In my back line, very similar to yours, Mark, except with Lacroix in there as well. I am going to wait and see the exact 11 they play in the midweek, but it sounds like Glasner's just going to rotate the full 11. I'd be very surprised if Lacroix was playing in the European clash, not the Leeds game, but I will obviously wait to find out more on that. I'm getting a little bit sick of the Fulham Anderson, I must admit. I'm going to hold him this week, I think, although I would have the money if I was to move Mbermo down to upgrade Anderson to Virgil, Van Dijk or Tarkowski. Obviously, Tarkowski would be a next week thing, and probably Virgil as well would be better off just doing next week if I even wanted to. So I think with that in mind, I've settled on ideally just making the one move, rolling to 4 free transfers next week. So Mbermo down to Semenyo. Then I've got the midfield 4 that I'd want this week: Fernandes, Semenyo, Saka, Foden. And then up top, the same 2 as most other people. Haaland with Thiago gives me 1.4, I think, in the bank if I make the move before any price changes. And I don't think there's any time pressure on that over the next couple of days. So yeah, 1.4 could get me from Anderson up to an Everton defender next week. Or it could get me up to Van Dijk even if I wanted to. Could also, with a little bit of shuffling elsewhere, get me to Ekatike pretty easily, or Jared Bowen next week if I wanted to. So yeah, I like the flexibility that is coming, because there are some good fixture swings on the horizon. And yeah, with 4 free transfers next week, I can have a team that I'm looking forward to this week as well. So yeah, fingers crossed it's that big green arrow I'm patiently and less patiently waiting for week on week. But yeah, I'm fairly happy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault it really. I think next week's probably the time when you'd be looking at bringing in palindrome, or bringing in kind of something to try to not force it exactly, but you'll have those 4 free transfers again. It does feel like Boomo out this week is the one.
Yeah,
really. Well, obviously that's the one. And then beyond that, you're so well set that you don't have to worry about it too much. Same as last week. Mark, the only thing that kind of strikes me looking at Sam's team, sorry Sam, we'll come back to you in a second. And the only thing looking at Sam's team that gives me the willies very slightly is that I don't have any Palace defenders. I'm just hoping that Leeds are able to carry on their stupendous home form. Basically, that's all I'm going to be doing. Just ignoring that game entirely. Hopefully, it's hidden in the rest of the games this weekend. Oh no, it stands out on its own, doesn't it? Oh no, it's an 8 p.m. Oh no, hang on, Everton and Arsenal playing at that time. Okay, that's fine. But all I'll be doing is just continuously checking for the Leeds goal. Hopefully Calvert-Lewin does us all the favour. Your man Calvert-Lewin, Sam.
You'll be fine.
I until this minute, I kind of forgot how much of a threat Crystal Palace defenders are to people who don't have them, because I just had Munoz for all season until I sold him last week, so I never really need to worry about not having a Palace defender. So yeah, Lacroix has reminded me here that Leeds do need to score this weekend. That's another one I'll be keeping an eye on. And yeah, Calvert-Lewin's been doing his best Brazilian Ronaldo impression the last couple of weeks, so hopefully that continues, and hopefully he gets through another game without picking up an injury. Sam, you've left yourself in a really strong position with team's already great. 4 transfers next week sounds amazing. I'd be struggling to figure out improvements that you can make. And this week, the only thing I'd have a headache over this week is which Anderson to play. I don't think that's a straightforward decision.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys the same thing. Like, is there a benching dilemma here between the Andersons, possibly even Lacroix as well, arguably? Yeah, not much in it between any of them. Any preferences there?
Always play Lacroix. Let's not even get into that.
Okay. Between the 2 Andersons, then, what do you reckon?
What's Fulham defensively, if I remember correctly? Like, you always think of them doing okay. I think they're kind of mid-table, something like that in the XGC. I can't remember what.
They're like 1.29 XGC per 90, something like that. Yeah,
I can't remember what it is at home. What their XGA is at home. I'm pretty sure their home data is not that bad. They get probably mid-table. Let's face it,
Yeah.
Fulham are that sort of team where if you go, mid-table, it'll probably be about right. They both can get DEFCON, aren't they?
You'd think, yeah.
And then Anderson is very much a ball meets head midfield defender, whereas Anderson is that has that capacity for upside. So I don't know. I'd probably play the Forest guy. I think.
Okay.
And under Dyche, they're Forest are a revelation, aren't they, Mark?
Yeah, I'm gonna go for another vote for the Forest Anderson. They've just been very good last couple of weeks. I expect him to score in this game. So there goes the Anderson clean sheet. And then it's just a question of, can Anderson chip in with something? Just a wee cheeky assist somewhere, which he definitely can. Fulham are losing quite a few to AFCON, which I think will have an impact. So I will say it's a coin toss. It really is a coin toss. And hopefully you don't get punished too badly either way. But I like Elliot Anderson over Joachim Anderson this week.
To be fair, there's nothing in it for me. I even if I do get punished, Tom will know this better than most. I don't get too angry with my benching points. At least I've got them, I suppose. So, and knowing that it's as tight as this, and even you guys are struggling to pick it as well, I won't lose sleep whichever way I go with it. But yeah,
one way to avoid getting the Anderson decision wrong is just bench both and play Rodon and go for 0-0.
Yeah, that's true actually. I don't mind Rodon this week, to be fair. If Palace are in any way leggy, although if they're rotating the full 11, they might be okay. But yeah, I don't mind Rodon.
Defense at home, Sam.
Are they still fourth best? Wow,
they are.
I feel like they've fallen off the cliff recently, but maybe not.
And more hopium if you do play Anderson. So this is what I'm looking at playing Anderson. Is that Forest the second worst XG away? But I mean, a lot of that's so noisy because you've got Ange and you've got Nuno and you've got all the other people within that. So I think Anderson is the way to go there. But yeah, looking strong, everybody. Let's hope for another green arrow this week.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And I think that brings us to the end of our festive edition of Who Got the Assist. It's been a pleasure as always, Mark. Obviously, just the second me and you. But yeah, eight in a row. We'll have to get you up to 10. I think that's got to be the goal now. We'll get you the hat-trick ball next year. And then we're looking for the decade of Mark Christmas pods. That would be quite special, I think.
I mean, for as long as I'll be playing FPL, which is probably going to be for another 40 or 50 years, hopefully, I'll be going nowhere. So this streak, it's like Harry Wilson's streak at the moment. It's not going to end.
Yeah. Well, Chris Wood maybe a longer streak from last year, and we can just keep him in your team as well for the whole season. But anyway, as always, we thank you all for listening. Hopefully you've all enjoyed it. We have been Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at Who Got the Assist, all written out one word. FPL Pricey for me on there. On X, it's WGTA_FPL. Again, FPL Pricey on there for me. And on YouTube, it's Who Got the Assist. Again, all written out one word. And I'm on there at FPL Pricey. And of course, Mark, it's just FPL General, right? Across all channels.
Yeah, across all the socials, it's FPL General. Or just Google the manager who doesn't have Erling Haaland, and you'll probably find me there as well. And the 59th Minute podcast every week as well.
Of course. On Reddit, it'll just be a whole thread for this one guy who's not got Erling Haaland.
Oh, yeah. I certainly don't visit Reddit this season, that's for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, if you guys listening have enjoyed the pod, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us and Mark a follow on those channels, and do make sure you go and check out his podcast as well. And if you do enjoy the pod and Mark's pod, I'm sure he would also appreciate it if you could give us and him a 5-star rating wherever you listen to it. Of course, if you're watching along on YouTube, leave a like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff really does help us out as well. In the meantime, thank you so much. Merry Christmas, although me and Tom will be back before Christmas as well. So you'll get 2 lots of that before we get to the big day. And we'll catch you very, very soon.
Yes, thanks, Sam. Thanks, Mark. Love that. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being with us. We'll be back next Monday to give you a bit more time to listen to us before Christmas, and then back on Saturday 27th, just because selfishly I'm off to the in-laws next day and then that's taking all my expensive equipment with me. Hope this is you think about the Christmas period. Happy Christmas from us if you don't catch the next episode, and we'll see you on Monday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?